got so many things going on. I mean, not so many things going on, but so many tasks to perform. And I forgot what day it was, actually. I forgot that it was, I don't know what I was thinking. But anyway, I kind of like doing them on Sunday mornings. It gives me an extra day to prepare, you know, and I think if people could do that, they might be a little better. I mean, I think we'll learn more. I mean, I spend a lot of time on this stuff, you know, and you know, I don't know how many weeks it is. Hi, Rena. Hi. Yeah, you're muted, but you can unmute yourself. Hello, Rena.
Hi.
Yes, hi. Yeah, Rena's interested in James Hillman, and so am I. So this should be good. But what? Hey, Adam. Yeah, Adam and Miles and Jan and Louis and Gary and Jordy. Jordy's from Madrid. Miles is from Calgary. I think Louis is from Pennsylvania. I'm not sure where everybody else is. But where are you from, Adam? California.
Yeah, Oakland.
I was just gonna guess. That's horrible.
Well,
Why would I think you're from California? But anyway, I mean, you have the, you know, a lot of the youngins that went to California noticed that it was a separate country. It just had a culture that they didn't notice in any other part of the world, you know,
yeah.
Especially around San Francisco, you know, in that area. And, you know, I know right now, I mean, it's got more, I mean, like, what is it? 70% of the venture capital deals in the world are run through San Francisco. And I think that Austin is becoming #2 next to Zurich and Hong Kong. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But, you know, I was noticing, you know, since I do have a day job, you know, intuitives never reap the harvest. So I'm probably going to work till I'm 80. That if I, you know, I don't know if you ever heard of Charles Ives, but he was a composer and a classical composer, a modern classical composer. And he, you know, was an insurance man and wrote all his compositions on the weekends, you know, and I'm kind of that way. I'm in a morning person, you know, where Gawain was a sun person, you know, and I know night people too. I don't know, it's strange what kind of energy that people have, but I was when I was thinking about this, I thought about the this wonderful little dream that somebody had, you know, just about what time of the day is your most energy, you know, and this comes from the notes of the seminars in 1925, where Jung was asked by some of his participants to, or his students, to kind of explain his, you know, his biography. Hi, Marina. And I think, who else? Charles came, and Ivan, we missed you. And I'm so sorry I screwed up the dream group, but I just totally forgot, you know, and I was so busy. But anyway, this is just a little snippet about the time of the day when you have the most energy, you know, and it comes from, Jung is talking about his vision in the cave where the black scarab comes after the fair-haired hero. You know, he sees in this hole, that was when he drops down and he goes into the cave and he sees this big cavern or thing, kind of a well with red light coming out of it, takes it off, looks down, and he sees floating along in the water a dead fair-haired hero who's followed by a black scarab and then by a midnight sun with millions of little snakes attacking it, you know. And he says, now he's talking about the fair-haired hero. He says, the latter can be taken as the son of day, that is the superior function. After he goes comes black night, which is the scarab, which then gives birth to the new sun. The thing that appears should be, in our expectation, a new hero, a rebirth of the one that died. But in reality, the rebirth is a midnight sun. And he says the idea of the son of the day having its opposite in the night is an archetypal idea. Now, this is what appeals to me about Jung. I mean, this is so incredibly profound, you know. I mean, I don't know where you find this anywhere else. Pythagoras, for example, thought that the earth had a twin. The idea also comes out in an anonymous book that was published during World War I. He just called it The War. The book was called Peter Blobb's that's his name too, Peter Blobb's, B-L-O-B-B-S, Real Dreams. And the first dream, the one in which the midnight sun analogy appears, is called The Night of the Swinging Censer. And a censer is a, you know, that the priest brings it in like this. He's trying to set the mood that this is a sacred time. We're moving out of time. You know, we're moving out of ordinary reality into timelessness, you know, and that's what is sort of implied. But anyway, this is the dream. The dreamer is an old cathedral which slowly fills with people. It is sunset time or after. In the middle of the cathedral, there hangs a censer which is swinging to and fro. And the more the night advances, the stronger grow the oscillations. And at the same time, the church fills with hundreds of people clad in the costumes of all times and of all centuries. It means time is coming to a standstill. And and finally, even primitives move in. As the church fills, I mean, you know, this is going all the way back to the beginning of man. The church is filling as the censer swings during the night with the entire history of man. And as the church fills, the censer swings more and more and glows more brightly. At midnight, the maximum is reached, and towards morning, it decreases. With sunrise, it comes to a standstill. Okay, now we're getting morning consciousness now, you know, and this is what Jung says. This is an extremely fine demonstration of the movement of the unconscious. As the day fades, the unconscious is activated, and by midnight, the censer is in full blaze, but lighting up the past. Isn't that amazing? You know, I mean, as the dynamic principle increases in power, and further back we go, the more are we overcome by the unconscious. The more dynamic the principle gets into full swing, the greater is the power of the censer, and the greater is the power gained by the unconscious until the condition of dementia precox may ensue. That could be where you just fall into a waking dream. That's schizophrenia. The dream of the censer showed very beautifully the slow advance of power as the night advanced. The flaming censer is analogous to the midnight sun, which becomes incandescent when the day sun or the superior function goes out. But anyway, I just thought about that, and the fact that it's just interesting what time of the day everyone has their greatest energy. And by the way, hi, Tim. Oh, wait, Kevin is.
Right.
Yes.
In the Red Book, too, when Dr. Jung wanted to speak to the anchorite asks him to wait because he did his meditations and prayers in the morning.
Yes. Yeah, it's always interesting. You know, Gawain was always strongest from noon to sun. So he's a sun hero, just like the fair-haired hero, who Jung killed, by the way, with a little dwarf. They killed Siegfried, who's the fair-haired hero. This happened almost exactly at the same moment as Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Serbia. And, so there was this sort of a feeling in the air. We talked about the break last time, where suddenly we go from Queen Victoria and all these, sort of a classical romance to Brancusi and Picasso, and James Joyce and T.S. Eliot and Einstein, and just kind of falling into Alice in Wonderland after 1914, 13. Well, anyway, I just thought we'd finish up with this with Hillman, and we'll just go to about 11, and then we'll just turn it open to everybody to talk, because I think that's very helpful. And talk about anything you want to. So anyway, I just wanted to finish up where we left off last time. And, I could almost go another week on this, but I don't want to bore everybody to tears, because it is so, if you wrap your head around this short essay, you really understand the purpose of the middle realm, the realm between what he's what his I guess what it comes down to is this. Jung said that he liked to tell people that they have that the psyche is real, that there's a rattlesnake in your pocket and you don't know it. And he says, when I tell people that, they just look at me very blandly and say, "Oh, is that so?" Well, it's a very powerful thing, and we're just completely oblivious of it. But anyway, the idea is that soul and spirit are in our got combined. And so instead of having spirit, which is the witness of the imagery of the soul of the soul comes up with the daemons and the imagery, and the spirit is the witness of it. It's supposed to be the witness and the discerner, the one who differentiates, who takes the images and arranges them into something that produces the birth, what is born between the witness of spirit, the differentiator, the logos, and the imagery that comes up through the daemons and the daemonic world of the soul is the child that's born from that is meaning, and it's the philosopher's stone. It's the third thing where the opposites unite, and this is why it is so vital and so important, because it really is almost, you could say it's our purpose for existence. What is the purpose of this, all of these, this consciousness and this awareness and this fate breaking through us at sometimes, and what does it mean? And I think you get close to it here, and that's why I think this is an important essay. And anyway, he's talking about the Jaspers, and Jaspers, he says, more than anyone, captures what the world of science, philosophy, theology, and the outer world, their case against Jung. And what Jung really brings in is the importance of soul, and soul is Hillman in another book. I mean, it's really important sometimes, I think, to distinguish between these words like soul and mind and spirit, and what do they mean and what's the difference. But he mentions this what Keats said about. He says, Keats said, "Call the world, if you please, the vale." What's the vale? It's the valley. It's the where we all live, not the mountain. It's the valley. The vale of soul making. There you will find out the use and the purpose of the world. It's the vale of soul making. And it's a long depression, an empty hollow, regarded as a place of scene or trouble or sorrow, the scene of mortal, the earthly, the lowly. And now this comes, by the way, from the 14th Dalai Lama. This is something he wrote someone about soul. Soul is the home in the deep shaded valleys. Heavy, torpid flowers saturated with black grow there. The rivers flow like warm syrup. They empty into huge oceans of soul. But spirit lives in a land of high white peaks and glittering jewel-like lakes and mountain flowers. Life is sparse and sounds travel great distances. No spirit broods over lofty desolation, for desolation is of the depths, as is brooding. There's no brooding going on up on the mountain. At these heights, spirit leaves soul far behind. The soul's way of proceeding is the way of dreams, reflections, fantasies, reveries, poems, and paintings, And so this is the idea here is you can't take spirit, which is the witness, and separate it from soul, which is what the Dalai Lama just described there. They need to be differentiated, and if you put them together and you say there's just world and there's God and there's nothing in between, that's the case against Jung. And Jaspers is the one who summarizes it here. According to Hillman, he says he gives 6 arguments against it. And yeah, okay. Anyway, sorry, I had a little interruption. Okay, his 6 arguments is: 1, it misses transcendence, because if you're going to live in the daemonic world, you live in the world of immanence. There is no transcendence. There's 2 definitions of transcendence. One's it's completely transcends, or it's outside of the world and outside of life, and actually it's inaccessible. But the other thing is, when Jung's talking about the transcendent function, he's talking about a bridge that connects 2 things. So does it transcend a gap, or is it totally inaccessible? That's the question. But Jaspers is saying here that it's inaccessible to some extent, except through texts, or that the mediator is Christianity, or it's there is a different mediator. Anyway, it's not the daemonic world, and man loses his irreplaceable value. In other words, it's existential humanist, is what Jaspers is saying, is the irreplaceable value, and where Jung would say, yes, it is, but also soul is an irreplaceable value, because soul and man are made for each other, and imagine, if you imagine a world without soul, and maybe we'll get to it if I could start condensing a little more. I'm kind of going on. Okay, and then number 3 is it's too fragmentary. Man is split. There's no relation to the one. Then in number 4 is, this is the argument against it, is that you're submerged in nature. You know, man is submerged in nature. And number 5, it's just an aesthetic attitude, you know, and it's for every situation, there's an image. Well, that's not transcendent unity, you know. And then the daemons don't exist. There's only 2 things: empirical reality and transcendent actuality, and there's nothing in between. So they don't exist. They're chaos, and their multiplicity is the pandemonium. But though they don't exist, they contradict everything, and they require us to battle against it. You know, the philosophers, the theologians, the scientists, they have to contend against it. And they don't have any ability to speak. And if they did speak, what language would they speak? You know, and so anyway, it is, you know, Christianity not denied, and this is, I'm not denigrating Christianity, but this is what we're talking about, is the undercurrent outside of the regular church, and it's pretty much alchemy, you know, but it's there, and it's not, both are very valuable, so that's not devaluing either side. But this is a lost energy that existed before there were great texts which you know, informed us, before we were informed by the daemons, you know. And are they still here, and are they still operative? You know, that was the question Jung had when fate broke through. He had to respond, and that happened in 1913. Fate broke through him, and he had to respond. And his response was that the psyche is real. This middle realm exists. And that's pretty much, you know, what his great discovery is. And Hillman is saying he also came up with a method of communicating with it, which is active imagination. And he also discovered that the alchemists had been using it for 2,000 years, you know, along with the Gnostics and along with Pythagoras and Heraclitus and Parmenides and Empedocles, and almost all of the Greeks were very, the Lucius mysteries were all, and of course, so all the Native Americans have a third, and most indigenous peoples who don't have access to written texts live in this world. So it's very human. And I think you'll find too that soul is very human. I mean, this is what's so beautiful about it. I think it's so very human, you know. If he says, here's what Hillman is saying: what are the consequences of denying the daemons and denying really soul? If you deny the daemons, because the soul, it's a soul is what the Dalai Lama described as, and what Philemon told Jung too, is that you think that your deeds, your acts, your ideas, your thoughts, that you created them all yourself. You didn't create them. You're experiencing them. And they come from somewhere else. You know, I mean, these are things that are happening within us that we, to some extent, and Jung identified these in his 4 functions, we do have some willful control over them in the thinking and the feeling functions. But in the intuitive and the sensation functions, everything that happens there is not absolutely outside of our control. It happens to us, you know. So then there's this mixture of the witness, which is thinking and feeling, and the more feminine world of intuition and sensation, although feeling, of course, is very feminine too. Thinking is the most masculine, function. And I would say sensation too. That's probably the masculine, but I'm getting off track here. That's not really correct. Anyway, the consequences of denying the daemon and all that is left in our awareness now is ego. It's the only thing that's real other than, physical events, and what he called transcendent actuality, which is so abstract, it's just completely sterile. And so what are dreams now? Everything in the psyche now is mine. It's contents of my ego, So know thyself becomes know myself. Now we're it's a different feel. I mean, what's the difference between know thyself? In other words, yourself, thyself is not you. Know thyself is to know that part of us that's not us. You're not Jung's first discovery, and this was part of his being fate breaking through, was I'm not the master in my own house. I'm a witness to it. And really, that's the purpose of ego. That's the purpose of spirit, is to be, and it's purposeful in real sense, is that the forces that evoke all of this wanted a witness, wanted this Archimedean point so that it could see itself. It wanted to look back on itself. So spirit, logos, and ego are the witnesses of this great divine drama, which is Jung, as Proclus says, that the world of the daemons is a world of telling, a world of story, a world of drama, and that speaks in mythic images, but it needs spirit and ego and logos to give it a structure and to take it apart, and so that you don't get lost in the inflation, or like James Joyce's daughter, that she drowns in the water in which Joyce swims. In other words, Joyce was a witness. His daughter was a victim of this world, and so the idea is that we be Joyce to Finnegan's Wake, or we be Joyce to Ulysses. We be Joyce to these images, and bring them into our own. And this is the whole idea of the vision quest of the indigenous peoples, is to create our own personal myth. Who's our totem animal? What do we put in our medicine bag? What stones and fur things that we find are important to us. What, when we see a master animal coming, he's speaking to us. Go to the field where the 3 elk are. They will tell you where to go next. Things like that. So it's this development of the personal myth now, where there is no texts. We'll go into that a little bit later. But anyway, Jung. So then Hillman says, well, let's answer. He says, actually, I can't remember who the one was that collected all the Gnostic texts, but he was an opponent of Gnosticism. I think his name starts with an H. Maybe somebody remembers. But, he recorded very carefully, and it's our only source for Gnosticism. Because, the church just obliterated all of it, yet this a person who is trying to teach people don't be Gnostic, gives a really good account of each Gnostic, and it's our only source for their wonderful teachings in some cases. So now Hillman is saying that Jaspers, who really, Jaspers was a psychotherapist before, or a psychiatrist before he became a philosopher. So he's pretty aware of this and deeply aware of it, not just a little bit. I mean, he knows exactly what he's talking about. But, number one, here's the 6 critiques. And number one, he says it misses transcendence, demonic world. Yes, it does miss transcendence, because transcendence is not human. We need the gods to be brought down to earth and to be immanent in our lives. And this is the whole point of Hasidism, to make holy the everyday. Every moment needs to be filled with the sacred, and with the immanent divine, and so yes, it does miss transcendence. And so transcendence is spiritual world, immanence is the world of the soul. This is the world of the imagery. And of course, both of them are absolutely necessary. Not one is unnecessary, but the problem is the repression of soul by spirit, which up until Jung, it was a pretty hopeless case, other than the Renaissance and in the world of art and poetry. But the problem with the artists and the poets, I'm not, apologies to Tim, is they don't, I don't know really what I'm saying here, but there's the object of where the woman told Jung, what you're doing is art. And he says, no, it's not art. Until it becomes meaning, it's not art. Now, there were some artists like Paul Klee and Franz Marc, and can't think of that Russian painter, was very understanding of what the meaning of the artistic creative world was. But anyway, that the holy, that yes, it does miss transcendence because we need immanence. And then man is no longer irreplaceable. No, because value now arises from what is behind and within man, which is the soul, that world that the Dalai Lama describes, with the slow flowing rivers and the deep, rich vegetation and life. It is now a soul-centered world, not man-centered. Man is the witness. Soul is the source. Man is the witness and the one who's supposed to differentiate, which they call diacrisis. He's supposed to be the one who takes it and sorts it through, with which what the alchemists called the world of multiplication. Go over it and over it and over it with a relentless memory, and it speaks. That's the idea of the witness. The witness needs to be the vis-a-vis, the other side. There needs to be two sides. There needs to be not the inflation. The world of the soul and the world of imagery can be a world of inflation. It needs to be brought down into what Hillman calls sober science. In other words, it needs to be brought into this world to inform it and not to overwhelm it. In other words, this is what's so beautiful about Jung's reaction to all this too. Is he didn't go crazy. He kept saying to himself, I have 5 children. I'm married. I live on 228 Seestrasse. I have a job and have to feed my family, and so he's taking the position of Prometheus. He suddenly possesses the god's fire, but he does not give up his standpoint on earth. His feet are still on the ground, and he's not going to give up his point, his human stance. So and it has then number 3, the criticism is no relation, has no relation to unity, universal, the one, the unity. And Jung said to that, one is not a number. In unity and oneness, nothing exists, nothing happens. That's what if you want to see oneness, go to a black hole and get sucked into it. Nothing exists there. It's until you've got two, there is nothing. It's all potentiality. It's all latent potentiality until you have two opposites. And that's why the opposites are so important. And that's why the third place is so important, because the opposites now can't coexist except in the temple that we form through alchemy and the philosopher's stone, or our witness of soul as ego and spirit. And that's what we create. And they said that the entire Mysterium Conjunctionis, which was Jung's opus, is the story of how spirit and soul reunite. And this whole chapter here comes from the last chapter of Mysterium, which was called Self-Knowledge. But it's about the third. There's this first conjunction, spirit and soul, and the second is spirit, soul, and body. And that's wholeness. And you'll find out later, wholeness is not a oneness either. But anyway, only with multiplicity and reality can the world begin. And wholeness and completion is not unity. Now, this is Hillman, but it's a concatenation of specific opposites. So wholeness and union is cluster thinking. I have, let's say, maybe 20, 30 big dreams in my life. And then I've all got other little informing dreams. And then I've done all these numinous artworks that are bringing the image into making it concrete. And that's my wholeness. It's cluster thinking. And that's why the alchemists and some of the people in the ally work say that relentless memory is so important. We need to remember all of these because they fit together, yet there's spaces between, because each one of them is autonomous. That's what Hillman says later, that each one of these things, these concatenation of specific opposites are not, they have spaces between them. And the spaces between them is they're autonomous, but Jung said pleroma was kind of the eros was the cement between them, this relatedness. But they don't just go into a chaos, a mass, a amorphic mass. That's the idea of differentiating them in the first place, is dissolve and coagulate. Dissolve and coagulate. I mean, that's the whole deal. The whole process of alchemy is to take the prima materia, to split it up into images, and then to bring them back down into our awareness, which is called our earth. Because, and this is another thing, Hillman is so great at this. He says, there's the four elements, air, fire, water, and earth. And he says, yes, we're very airy, we're very fluid, we're very earthy, and we're very fiery. We're all four. So when they're talking about the four elements, they're talking about the psyche. This is just so extraordinarily beautiful essay here. It takes a long time to. I don't still feel that I have totally encompassed it yet. But then number 4 is that Jasper says you can't have the daemonic world submerges us in nature, and Hillman says that it does. Active imagination submerges man in nature again because he needs to return to the lost primordial instinctual responses manifested in archetypal images. Archetypes are instincts. Archetypes and instincts are the same thing. I mean, they come from the same source. What Jung said is archetypes are the ultraviolet side of the spectrum, and the instincts are the infrared, you know. So the ultraviolet is where all the colors come out, you know, and the infrared is the more, you know, heated redness of instinctual biological life, where the archetypes have more in them of creating, meaning creating function to some extent, you know. So there's a blur though, you know, between them. But so anyway, where Jaspers, he says this one really identifies the difference between Jaspers and Jung, where Jaspers says transcendence does not equal nature. You know, Jung says transcendence and nature are the same thing. You know, I mean, nature needs to be imbued with transcendence. And so, in other words, in the world of Hermes, in the world of Mercurius, and in the world of alchemy, we are not redeemed from outside. We are the redeemers of the divine that's trapped in matter, you know, and it needs rescue, and it calls out to us. The demonic world calls out to us, and it says, do not reject me because I'm black and uncomely, you know. And what she means is the prima materia, the mud of this darkness makes me so, you know. Who will give me attention? I will give into their hands the morning star. Well, that's what the demonic world is saying to this up here. You know, if you will just communicate with us. And it's not easy either. You'll find out if you do it, it takes a long time. Not something that you can just turn on. It has to, you have to create new pathways. You have to do like Jordy does, 11 hours of meditation. For how many days do you do that? For 10 days. Does 11 hours of meditation for like 4:13 a.m. until when?
Well, the thing is, the gong starts at 4:30.
Yeah.
And the last seat ends by 21:30 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, see, that's creating new pathways. You know, there's a man in France who used to be he's called the happiest man in the world. I mean,
yeah.
He through meditation, he's totally reshaped his brain, you know. And
that's true. The economic case is the law of diminishing return.
Yeah.
The main difference is you sit for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour.
Yeah, but I mean, if you do it every day, I mean, it's the whole idea is active imagine. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But once you have some age, say more than 20 or something like that, to rewire what's wireable, it's a major effort and not so brilliant results. Now, if you do that in chunks of 10 days, quite intensive, you make a difference when you leave. Not a big deal, but once you've gone to 4 or 5 or 6 of those, daily life starts to change. I don't want to interrupt, but I am in a very personal, intense celebration, which it's very pleasant to me to share with you.
Okay, sure.
It's about soul and connection to soul.
Mm-hmm.
1990, 21st of June, 5:30 p.m. was the moment of solstice in Madrid.
Yes. Oh, wow.
I was in the Obgyn department where my wife was an assistant to the medical director, and we were parents to my daughter.
Well, congratulations.
Exactly.
Wow, that's amazing.
If you are interested in astrology, in 0 degrees of Cancer.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Solstitian girl, full Monty.
Yes. Well, you know, I come from Norway. Well, congratulations. Yes, you're Bustamante. I come from Norway.
It's a solstitian day. which
Yeah.
makes them affect too many living. I don't know mussels and clams, etc., but most, say, mammals have some relation to sunlight and sun and say yearly cycles and things like that. So I indulge with some expensive alcoholic champagne type of celebration, which I think
Yes.
is appropriate, and it's appropriate to be here sharing that with you.
Well, congratulations. So is this your first grandson then, or grandchild?
No. I am father, not grandfather.
Oh, father.
I
Woo.
have two, a girl and a boy. As
Yes.
far as I can tell, they know how to reproduce.
Okay.
I have no, let's put that way. I have no reasons to suspect that they ignore, but so far nothing has happened.
Okay.
If you
Well,
want,
that
later,
is amazing. I mean, I just, you know, that you forget that it is the summer solstice. So if you were in, what is that, New Grange, you would see the light hit the back of the cave there. You know. I mean, in Norway they have these huge bonfires on the shores of the fjord on the 21st, and I forgot all about that. See, we're kind of divorced from our nature here. We're not submerged in nature, you know. Well, anyway, I'll just finish this up a little bit, and then we'll just go back to we'll open up to whatever you want to talk about. The 6 criticisms, and maybe we'll finish it up next time. I probably talked too much, but you know, so then the daemons are only aesthetic attitude. And this made me think too of Adam's, you know, Artemis production. You know, Hillman says that the aesthetic attitude is a concealment that shows the guile of the anima of the soul. He says, aestheticism belongs to her. Don't forget it. It doesn't belong to us. So, I mean, she is the owner of the images, you know, and so she's, in case of Artemis, you know, she said that no man has beheld me unveiled, and Actaeon happens to see her unveiled, and he's hunting, and so she turns him into a stag and his own hounds devouring. And you know, it kind of, this reminded me of the case of Edward, where the guide, you know, to Edward that he met, you know, the one that sees him in a brothel. He sees all these women in the brothel. You know, he had a very bad relationship with the feminine, and so you know, his dreams were telling him that he has a degraded image. Out comes this wonderful, beautiful woman who clearly doesn't belong there. And she comes up to him and she just says, "A bientôt," see you soon, you know. And then he proceeds to have an 18-month active imagination with her, you know. And she, even though she was incredibly evocative, she did not want animalness from Edward. She wanted transformation. So her idea that she was fascinating was for a transformational purpose, not for one of you know, just in biological, instinctual, you know. So the idea was that it was a transformational fascination, not a. So that's why Artemis is devoured by his own hound, is because he did not realize that the fascinating aspect of the anima world, or this feminine world, is for a transformation, not for not for auto eroticism or whatever you want to call it, you know. Anyway, that's where I would just, it's not the aesthetic attitude. This aestheticism belongs to the soul. It's not, has nothing to do with us being the creators. It's with it's the images of the soul of which we're the witness. So, you know, the egos and spirit are the witness of these images that come up, you know, and that she creates these beautiful images, you know, these unbelievably, startlingly beautiful images. Like I had a dream the other night, and I said, oh, this dream's so great. I'm going to write it down, you know. And then this voice tells me, this is not your dream. This is our dream. Stay away from it. Don't come there. Now, that's a pretty good dream. I thought that was a good dream. But anyway, then the sixth one is it's neither mediates between the empirical reality or the transcendent actuality. It's God and world and nothing in between. And this is the two-world system of theology and science and all that. And yeah, if you read the notes that Hillman writes, you know, he has a lot of notes there. They're just beautiful notes. I mean, they're absolutely. Some of them are just crazy good, but let's see. Go up here. Okay. All right, there we go. All right. Let's see. He just says, let's see. Oh, well, he's talking about the mediator between the two worlds. There's only two, it's a two-world system. You know, there's God, or there's transcendence, and there's the world, and there's nothing in between. And this was not the man who is expert, the daemonic man. It says if the man who denies the daemons breaks the chain that unites the world to God. And this was one of the Christian Platonists says, and he's talking about the mediator between the world and the transcendent. The doctrine of the daemons, if properly understood, would be the only mediator that we needed. I mean, you know, that's the issue concerns the nature of the mediator. Is he one historical person? Is he Christ and the cross, the axis mundi, or is it plural imaginal persons? And remember, imaginal means to expand consciousness. It comes from the same word as to magnify, you know. And so he says, hence, you know, since the church is saying, or you know, not because of anyway, just a misunderstanding of the demonic world. When these voices do come up, they call them demons. And most people who are possessed by demons are the ones who are like Joyce's daughter. And so the church wants to exorcise these. And what do they do it with? The cross, you know. So in other words, they're saying, we're the mediator, not you, you know. So they're holding up, you know, who's the mediator here? Is it the one historical person, or is it the world of soul, which is the daemons, which is supposed to be the bridge? I mean, this is the idea of the soul. Go ahead, Jordy.
And the quaternary.
And the quaternary, yes. Well, it is a quaternary, you know. And what's interesting about being suspended at the center of the opposites. Go ahead.
Quaternary kills the daemonhood.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, well, the idea too of the meaning,
I mean,
yes. Yeah, the meaning of the crucifixion is that the ego is suspended at the center of a quaternity where the self exists. You know, I mean, that's the idea of the ego submits to being united with the center of a quaternary. So, I mean, it is a lot of, it's a symbolic death, you know.
well, the Christian cross
Yes.
has an element of quaternary, but if you look closely, there are at least 7 elements there.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well, yeah, there's up, down, middle, center, you know, and yeah.
like in the ritual, say, ceremonies of the American Aborigines. The
Yeah,
sun,
the pollen path, beauty above me, beauty below me, beauty
side,
before me, beauty behind me. You know, I'm on the pollen path. You know, there's 7 aspects, which is an eternity.
Yeah.
But at least the what is called a double set of opposites exists. You know, and man, the what holds them together is where man needs to reside. You know, and the only way he can reside there is by a symbolic death or symbolic. I think that's a little too strong of a word. I mean, we're going to get in later. I think we'll go to just comments here in just a couple of minutes, but next time we'll cover and hopefully we'll finish.
I don't
Go
want to be distracting here. The whole point is that something that deserves some more research, I mean in our context,
Mhm.
is the religious demonology and the management of demonology here.
Yes. Well, yeah. You know, the daemons, you know, were demonized. You know, and the only way a daemon becomes a demon is when the ego says that world doesn't exist. You know, that's demonic when you're denying the soul. I mean, so now you're saying that the ego is the only thing that exists. It's ego world and here, and there's no soul. So you've lost, you're now living in a you've made yourself demonic, you know, by denying soul, you know, which is the mediator. And so the daemons, when you deny the daemons are real, then you become the demon, is the idea. I mean, you now live in a demonic world. And so when soul, the world of soul doesn't exist, yes, there are devils and you're it. You know, the devil is the personification of the ego. You know, it's the personification of the archetype of the ego as its own God. You know, this all-powerful ego. I'm not saying that exactly right, but it was something Ettinger said. That
Right?
yes.
Dr. Jung actually provided a definition of demonism, which I will post on the chat.
Okay. Great. Yeah, it is. You know, and you notice he spells this, the pandemonium as and we're going to go in. Well, next time, finish with image and iconoclastism, and I'll try to. Still, I don't feel that I've done an adequate job of this beautiful, extraordinary, beautiful essay. It is so important. But anyway, I think, let me see, I just might want to finish with just a little bit of the 2 worlds. So anyway, they cannot allow the 3rd realm on which Jungian entire, now this is Hillman, science, theologians, philosophers cannot allow the 3rd realm to exist. And that's the one on which Jung's entire thought and life was based. Essa in anima, you know, being in soul, you know, and the ontology of the soul. And it's, so Jasper inflates the ego and makes it into a god, or not a god, but at least it's so inflated now that it's you imagine this. He says the consequences of not having soul. So daemons are experienced, personified perspectives, a mode of imagining, and that expanded consciousness. Jasper's real target is soul. He's attacking psychic reality and its objectivity. He's attacking essa in anima, being and soul. He's attacking he's attacking being united with instinct and being united in not being divorced from nature. You know, I don't know what's poor Kevin can't get on here. He thinks that we should. He says the demonic world does not lift us out of nature into transcendence. He insists, which we don't want to do. Why would we want to do that? He insists soul is not the irreplaceable thing is man, not soul. And he's saying that we live in a world of either or and is are, and he just denies emotional or irrational reality. And he goes on, and this is why this whole thing's so ironic. He compares the daemons to Proteus. Now Jung had quite a experience with Proteus, this ungraspable nothingness. Now there's a character in the Odyssey, and I'm trying to remember his name, but it's not Odysseus, who's trapped on an island and can't get off. And then the daughter of Proteus tells him that if you capture Proteus, he must tell you the truth. And so he's the keeper of seals. So they get in these stinky seal costumes, and when he comes down to count his seals, they rush out and grab him. But he's a shapeshifter, and he changes into a million things. But they just keep holding on and holding on and holding on. And finally he says, okay, what do you want? And then he says, why can't we leave? What God did we offend? And then they tell him what God had offended. And that was what Jung said he did with every image. But this is what Jaspers is saying, is even though he's saying the demonic world isn't real, he never runs out of breath trying to contradict it and get rid of it. So it's, he doth protest too much, and he really wrote a book about this because he was very familiar with schizophrenia, so which he could very well tell that it was not something, it was something that happens to people, and so then I'll just finish with one thing from Proclus here, and then we'll just open it up. But Proclus says, allying ourselves with the tribe of daemons, he says, is allying ourselves with the mythical manner of telling. And daemons teach us the as if thinking of myth. And in this apology for the fables of Homer, and now this is kind of an interesting thing because it tells us, where did fairy tales come from? And where did all these stories come from? Well, it came from what he's saying here, from the daemons. He says, we may especially preserve the alliance of these fables with, we may especially perceive the alliance of these fables with the tribe of daemons, whose energies manifest many things symbolically, as those know who have met daemons when awake or have enjoyed their inspiration in dreams. And he goes on, well, at the end, he's going to tell us what is the meaning of all this? Why? Why are we doing this? And the idea is it's healing. is the way of I don't know. I mean, the fact that people, Jung used to say a third of his clients, they didn't have any problems other than just a great sense of malaise, of just absolute, no, and Jung himself, experiences where fate breaks through. One woman came to Jung and says, I don't care what color you give or anything you give me, but just don't give me gray. I mean, she wanted her analysis not to be gray, so to have color, and that's what there's a wonderful thing in the we'll get into next time, and hopefully we'll get done next time. And we'll just finish with the image and iconoclasm, because I really think if we can, and I think it would take maybe a month of these to get through it and sort of fathom it completely. But the idea is in Nicaea, they were saying, what they call brodures, you would have these things on the edge of your cloaks that you wore. Well, some people have all these fabulous embroideries on it, and everything. And so they outlawed that. You said you can't come to the Council of Nicaea with decorations on your brodures, or whatever they call them, but they did say later that you can have color in your images, because we like colors. But anyway, why don't we just now open it up to everybody, and why don't you anybody have anything to say? I mean, we want everybody to say something, but go ahead. Anybody? Just bursting. How about you, Gary? You have any comments?
Yeah, I'm still absorbing, to tell you the truth.
So am I. I mean, it's the more I get it, every time I've read it maybe 7 times, and I get something different out of it each time. And suddenly I say, was this here before? It's amazing. Well, how about you, Lois? Do you have anything? I don't know if you got a chance. We should put you on the mailing list. It's just we're just reading that Hillman's essay on.
I don't have anything right now, but just to let you know, when you get a chance on Facebook, look at your messenger. I sent
Sure.
a couple of days ago, but I don't think you've seen it yet.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've been traveling and.
That's okay. I just didn't want to fall through the cracks.
No, I'm sorry. I have been just like Jack and Jill rolling down the hill this week. How about you, Adam? That was, by the way, it's a beautiful, beautiful. All your creations have just this. They remind me of what they call Aeolian harps. You know what an Aeolian harp is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any observations or comments?
Yeah, actually, I had like a dream, sort of really quick vision type
Sure.
thing that flashed in my consciousness a couple of days ago. Because sometimes I feel like I'm pushing the envelope a little bit.
Yeah.
But so it was. But I thought I'd share it just because I thought it was interesting. It was actually thank you. It was a very quick flash with you, Craig, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And you were like sitting on top of this huge tower, and you had a crown, and it was like kind of a cross between a king's crown and a jester's hat, sort of like the frog in some fairy tales has.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, with the little spheres.
Yeah, it might have. Sometimes it has little crown, or sometimes it's got a little bell on the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I looked down, and the tower, it just descended into the depths, and you were also made of stone, and you were part of the tower. And just the message to me was like, somebody who is presenting to us sort of the depths of historical knowledge or thought about about these things. Just it was nice. It was just sort of very valuable, but also, you know, kind of a playful image. You had a little bit of a mischievous smirk on your face.
I am really Mr. Mischievous, I'll tell you. You know, there's Jung says, I tell our grandson sometimes about, you know, we'll do something that's not really supposed to be done. And I said, you know, your grandma and I are just a little bit naughty, you know. We're elfin. We are elfin.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, the idea of you know, this is another thing and you know, two books that are really informed. This one is the one at Senex and Puer, where he talks about the difference between soul and spirit, where I got the thing about what the Dalai Lama said. He said that spirit is humorless, but humble, you know, and whereas soul is full of mirth and humor and just this richness, because it's immanent, you know, involved in the world. And you know, I had this someone who experienced a near-death experience, you know, said that everyone he met in the next world had a very important task to perform, and they couldn't tarry very long because they were so busy. But he said they were all filled with mirth, as if they had this wonderful joke they wanted to tell me, you know. So I mean, it's just this idea of that humor is it's just one of the most magical divine things, you know. It really is. But to say that historical depths have an element of the jester or the trickster in them is a very beautiful image. It really is. How about you, Tim? What's going on? Any other things?
Well, just in terms of humor, I noticed that a lot of my heroes have this wonderful sense of giddiness. And,
Yes.
you know, the Dalai Lama is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I have spent some time with Archbishop Tutu of South Africa.
Yes, Desmond Tutu.
And he's a guy that is just always on the edge of giggling, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
he has witnessed the most horrible things in his part of the world. And yet, even in the midst of that, he was just so full of joy. And I think this results from having digested a life of suffering and being able to emerge on the other side. And I think one of the things that we in the civilized world kind of suffer from is a life that is just entirely too easy. And we don't really have a respect for this kind of deep suffering that gives a dimension to life. And it seems as though one of the reasons why fate is so mean to us is to force us to really grapple with suffering in its many dimensions. And nobody gets a get out of jail free card. Everybody gets to suffer in their own way, but we all have to really grapple with it and dive in. And only on the other side of that suffering is real kind of bone deep joy available to us.
That's what Jung was described as there's a trickster in Switzerland. I can't remember his name, but he was supposed to really embody this trickster element. And when anyone had had something very positive happening in their life, he would say, "I hear that you suffered a great success," you know, I mean, because he knew how it would all come out, that it's inflation and depression and inflation. I mean, that keeps us in that oscillation, keeps us. See, you have you need in good times you need Confucius, and in bad times you need Lao Tzu. I mean, there's this oscillation between, and that's life. I mean, what was the story about the man who suddenly a beautiful horse runs into his yard, and everybody says, "Oh, you're so lucky you got this beautiful horse." He says, "Well, we'll see." So the next day, his son's riding on the horse, and he falls off and breaks his leg, and they say, "Oh, that's so horrible that your son broke his leg." And he says, "We'll see." So the next day, the Chinese army comes, and they're conscripting draftees, and they ignore him because he's got a broken leg, and they said, "Oh, you're so lucky." He said, "We'll see." So anyway, I mean, the idea is that in Carmina Burana, it's about the Fortuna, the empress of the world. Are you at the middle of the wheel, or are you going up and down when it goes around? And I think there's a beauty in what they call poignancy. The sad, it's sadly beautiful. And so you got this oscillation between the inflation of joy and something horrible. How about you, Marina? You're from the UK, isn't that right?
Yeah, I am.
Yes.
Yeah, I am.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just enjoying listening to you, and I really appreciate you, doing a synopsis of the text. That's not a mean feat. So thank you very much. I really enjoy all the little connections and the threads that sort of spill out. That really helps me. I guess if I was going to add anything, what sprung to me was at the end when you said, why? Because it's healing. That's right. A lot of people feel a lot of dissatisfaction and disappointment and emptiness, and if they can be reconnected with the wonders of the soul and all that goes with it, then yeah, it's healing.
Well, yeah, and we'll go into that a little more beautifully from Hillman's description. Hillman's is just such a beautiful writer, and what he does at the end is he goes through why. What are we doing? What are we doing this for? And really, what we're doing is we're just recreating the world of which has been lost to us, which connects us with everything, connects us with the immanence of the divine, connects us with nature, it connects us with the lost world of the rich world of the eros, feminine, which has been and the world of the realm of the mothers, the realm of nature, all these things that are kind of lost in the world of a sterile, disconnected from the earth air being, which is kind of the one that's been dominating us for a while. But I mean, next time go over that aspect. Go ahead.
Dr. Jung once drew an analogy between love and schizophrenia, and inquired to some students, what does love and schizophrenia have in common? And he said, well, with both, it makes a difference. For example, if you fall into schizophrenia or if you dive into schizophrenia.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's what Joseph Campbell used to say. If you're going to jump off the cliff, do it head first. Make an experience out of it. But anyway, I was going to say one thing about Joseph Campbell said too. He wrote a book with a person who escaped the Chinese in Tibet in 56. And it's nothing against the Chinese, but he said, you know, and they went through all the troubles that he had experienced, and you know, which were horrible, you know. But Jung said, you didn't hear one word of recrimination from that man against anybody. You know, I mean, he was sort of like what Tim was describing with Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. I mean, there was a sense there of absolute non-suspension of judgment. It's, you know, it's a very Buddhist attitude of realizing that, I mean, there's an aspect of this that is, it's ignorance. I mean, it's not, there's an aspect of it that is, they're in the spot, the immovable spot, you know, where Kama, Mara, you know, Kama throws all these arrows at the Buddha, and they turn into flowers. And then he's tempted by his three beautiful daughters, you know, who are desire, fulfillment, and regret. That's the three names. And, you know, he's not moved. And then the last one is Dharma. He says, what about your social duty? You know, get out there on the picket line and everything. And nothing against this world either, but the Buddha does what's called bhumaspasha. You know, he touches the earth, and it lets the earth be his witness to sit here. You know, in other words, he's really is. That's the one aspect of Buddhism that I think people miss, is it's that act, you know, of the connection to the earth, you know, which is bhumaspasha. Okay, Jordy, what do you have to say? And then we'll go ahead.
Well, many things. Speaking about myself, I consider myself a servant of Dharma.
Yes.
And I am using that in the Theravada Buddhist tradition, which is not humbling. It's connecting to plenitude. Now, I have something for you, Tim, if you wish.
Sure. Sure, go ahead.
Do you listen?
Why don't you send the link in the chat? Can you do that? Oh, Miles Davis.
That's perhaps one of the best productions of Miles Davis, to my taste.
I love Miles Davis. I mean, somebody just did a documentary about him, you know, and he's the guy that invented the word cool, just in case you didn't know that. He's the guy that said cool and made it cool. Okay.
That was 60 years ago, in early 60s or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Miles was just his face, his stark face, you know, and he had Andy Warhol following him around like a puppy dog, you know, and he was kind of mean to him, but, you know, Andy was too much of a groupie to take offense. Well,
now, several more things. Being a solstitial day today, I will share my experience being with all of you, and thanks, Craig. I think you have elevated my situation of being a deep psychology gourmet to being a deep psychology delectation sybarite. Which I am using words, I know.
yeah, I go ahead.
And words are important here.
Yeah.
Now, I'll put that way. Being into the delectation mood and being a sybarite It's a way of honoring talent and honoring tradition. It can put in different ways, but today I choose that one. Adam, I agree with you. I am not impressed with Tony Wolff either.
Yeah, right.
Nevertheless, that can be distracting, and maybe there is material for half an hour, say, talk. Tony Wolff, in my experience, has to be confronted to the quadrant type of male approach to a structural psyche, like Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, and even David Data, and so forth. And they don't give credit to her. And say Tony Wolff is on the grounding of Robert Moore, of the late Robert Moore.
Yeah,
but
very interesting.
That's another issue. Now, one point I think is not Tony Wolff. Superego in woman works very different than superego in men in all cultures. Because there is the father image in woman and the abduction of the father issue, which works in all cultures, has to do not with nuclear family, with deep issues that can be distracting here, but ignore it at your own risk otherwise. I was just crediting Tony Wolff, and I think she has a very Rottenmeier type of prose, very much the taste of the 60s or of the 40s, and I don't will be distracting here. Now, I don't know if any of you have children or grandchildren. I have two. I have the children. You are a father, Craig. Okay. You, Rina, too? In my experience, the first connection with the real soul is when you are a father or a mother. That's basic. You have to work that up. And you have to deal, you have to bullfight. You have to bullfight like the bullfighters that. But it's a start. And either you have the experience or you don't. It's like sex or soloing if you're a private pilot. Either you've been there or you don't, and you don't lose time because there is no possible connection with people who doesn't have that experience. And I'll leave that here. Today, and I am celebrating
Yes.
my initiation to the life connection. And one second. I was 35, and that's 1 year later.
Oh my God.
You see?
Yes.
And these are the two gentlemen who happen to be my offspring.
Oh, wow.
I'll be
Beautiful.
honest. When I am a grandfather, if I ever have, I'm going to be a hardcore bull.
Yes. Okay.
So, but see, it's a way of celebrating life humbly in the service of
Yes.
others.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of extra comments. When you were mentioning how was the structure experience, how a structure generates or bullfights meaning, one thing which at some point was a source of wisdom to me appeared, I can put that in writing, was a chapter on a book from Harold Bloom, the literary criticist from Yale, who died a few months ago, talking about Plato and the name from the Iliad and the Odyssey and Homer. And the book was on the limits of wisdom or something like that. And he made the point that Plato was angered at Homer because Homer got many things that Plato was unable to grasp or to put words in terms of life experience. So there is a level of meaning of understanding which is beyond philosophy and which is beyond, say, a structural expression or rational grasping or elaboration. I think it's a readable, not particularly obscure fragment, worth spending, say, half an hour. of limits of rationality. And if you like Homer, so far the better. Huh? And the last comment, when you mentioned the emptiness of number one, which I think it's a valid point and it's something worth being reminded. What comes to me, which is a personal experience, is in all traditions of esotericism I know of, meaning Rosicrucians and such like, mostly Western, Jewish, Christian, Masonic, of course. Normally, the individuation process called initiation in those traditions has 3 steps. And the first step, the enter, say, the one who has joined the club, it's given as the reference the number 3 in some sort of formula, saying your age now it's 3, or your number is 3. Not 1 nor 2, it's 3. And you got to work on that. That's Pythagorean. Huh? Next step, when you are a fellow, that is a brethren, an equal, your number is 5. 6 will be the divine. And when you say it's 5, it's clear it's not 6. It's clear it's not 3. And then when you are exposed to some extent to the dark side and to intuition, in some parlance, what's called, say, the darkness visible, the number you are given at your age, it's 7 years or more. Just reminding that there is a hidden Pythagorean tradition, which is present as well in the Catholic Church more than in Protestant, in the Pleiad numbers as reference. And not so, like the railroad, it's not the train, it's the rails, which can supply some meaning or some structure here, is in this apparently simple play of numbers. And that's all for today, okay? On my side.
Well, I guess if we have any time, I was going to share just a couple things.
Yeah.
One being, since we're talking about Hillman, the other day I found a lecture on YouTube just entitled Archetypal Psychology. It was Hillman. It's about 3 hours long, but I definitely recommend it to everyone because it was just extremely good and very humorous. There's like a 20-minute segment where they just talk about strawberries. And yeah, it was very good, called Archetypal Psychology. And then last time, I believe it was last time, I had shared, this was just kind of an odd occurrence, very synchronistic or symbolic. Last time I had shared a dream about my hamster being in an aquarium.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
And, you know, it needed more land, it needed
You need to
islands.
form more islands. Yeah.
Right. And so then just the other night, I had a dream about a submarine captain that he was just stating his name, the date and the time, so that he was diving down. And then just last night, I don't know how it happened, but my hamster wound up in his water dish, which for a hamster is actually an extreme emergency, and was like in serious trouble. He easily could have died of hypothermia. I had to go get a hair dryer and start drying him off.
Wow.
And it was just very, very odd. I don't know how he wound up in there. It made no sense. And yeah, he was just in dire trouble.
It was a house dream. Every being in the house was dreaming about hamsters.
Yeah. But yeah, sure enough, he almost actually died last night of drowning.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I thought that was just a very, very kind of I don't know, like it manifested into a real physical thing. So that was just an occurrence that I wanted to share.
Yeah, that's very unusual.
Yeah.
Rena did. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, it was a very interesting example of something psychic coming about in a very physical way.
Synchronistic, or
Yeah.
some, just a link, a coincidental uncanniness. Rena, did you have any comments you wanted to make, or?
Yes, Craig.
Yes.
First and foremost, thanks for having me in this group. Thank you, everyone. So I'm from India, and Jung and his work are just kind of, just rising. So Hillman is really not known here.
Yes.
The way Hillman comes across, he's so radical in his approach and he's so blunt about it. So if you're just kind of starting to study Jung, then, Hillman is someone you want to keep on the side. But I fell in love with Hillman for his bluntness, for the way he just says, you is you and the other is other. Just don't think the entire responsibility lies on you, So that's what got me to him, because when you're reading Jung for the first time, you take the entire responsibility on yourself and you think, you have to change and the work is you and you have to go inside, and then you can see the differences in your relationship. But that doesn't work because the other person is not working, or, the world is not working around it. So when Hillman said that was such a liberation. Sometimes the world is messed up, just see it for what it is. And I started my reading because I got the material only yesterday. I started the reading with Senex and Pure.
Yes.
And it was such a lovely, lovely material that I just stop. It's just so much. And I did not start with the healing fiction, but the other one. And I was like, oh my God, this is just so good. And his writing takes you to a different space, and first and foremost, when you're from India, you're conditioned to think that your imaginal space, your fantasies are to be kept aside. So to read someone who says, no, indulge in your fantasy because that's your soul speaking, that's like such a huge validation. And when he speaks about humor and how spirit is about humility, I just started laughing because here we have a proverb, like an actual proverb that's put into our mind, which says that don't trust a person who's laughing all the time. Yes. So, we are told that at a young age. So you never trust a person who's laughing. And but I realized through my years of experience that somebody who laughs so much is someone who suffered so much in life.
Yes.
And so for me it was kind of my thing, but the societal thinking is that you don't trust that person. But my experience and my personal own experience is that there is suffering so much that you just want to laugh when you get a chance, even at the most trivial things. And the spirit being, the spirit, one of the attributes of spirit being humility and modesty. It brought to my mind all these people that I come across who pretend to be modest, who pretend to have that humble attitude towards them. They don't really have it. But they slip it into their conversation. Like, I've reached that height, but that way. So that contradictions were so evident. So when I was reading the Senex and the Pure today, I was like, God, this man knows the Indian culture so well. For me, it was just that, he's just writing about my people here and how we just don't know what we are doing. And when hearing Hugh, Craig, and how you facilitated, it was just beautiful. It's like as if I read the other material, and what Geordie said, and Adam and Tim, it just kind of resonated with me so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, it's Jung says in the Red Book, you believe, man of this time, that laughter is lower than worship. Where is your measure, false measurer? He says, and one thing that Murray Stein describes Hillman as the jazz musician of Jungian psychology. where von Franz and Edinger are classicals musicians. But I mean, he's at least those three books, the Anima and the Healing Fictions and the Senex and Quer, are just absolutely, come on.
Yeah.
And
Something to add on, when you mentioned von Franz, what came to me is, I don't know whether it was Geordie who said it or Tim, about this balancing of the opposites kind of a thing.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether it was Tony Wolff and Barbara Hanna, or whether it was Barbara Hanna and Marie-Louise von Franz who stayed together. But they had a custom between the two of them, where if something good happened to one of them, that one would be responsible for making the beds and doing the daily chores. So it was kind of a ritual of bringing, one back to, So that just kind of came to me. I don't know who said it, but, it kind of, it's just beautiful, the soul and the way the soul wants to express itself, and we never giving it credit, always wanting to climb the top and be in that spirit space, because that's what we all know and that's what's it's spoken about. The soul space is not spoken about so much.
Well, and that was because of what they taught. I just remembered that guy's Swiss jester's name's Till Eulenspiegel. And they said that Jung was Aniela Jaffe mentions this too, or Aniela Jaffe mentions, but it was Barbara Hanna and Marie-Louise von Franz were forced to live with each other by Jung, and that's why he founded the psychological club, because everybody there was so introverted, and he wanted them to extra, and he thought that Hanna and von Franz should live together because there were so many single women, Tony Wolff, of course, they were sort of these sorrow mysticas that had dedicated their lives to producing the moon child. Geordie had a real child, but like Linda David Fears says that some of her patients would, when they got in trouble, they would say, well, I'll just have another kid and then I can delay these psychological problems for a while. And she'd say, no, you need to give birth to the moon child, not a physical child. That's what you need now, so it is, that is, okay, well, let's,
Right.
How about, yes, go ahead.
I just want to make, perhaps clarify the relationship between Esther Harding and Marie-Louise von Franz. Dr. Jung didn't exactly force them to live together. It was a suggestion he made for two pragmatic reasons.
Yeah.
The first reason was that Esther Harding was 25 years older than Marie-Louise von Franz and very failing health.
Now it's Barbara Hanna.
I'm
Esther
sorry,
Harding.
You are correct. She was 25 years older and in quite bad health, and it was felt by Dr. Jung that living with Marie-Louise von Franz could care for her.
Yes, okay, that I did not know that.
And secondly, one of the endearing things about Marie-Louise von Franz, unlike Tony Wolff and a number of other women who worked with Dr. Jung at the time, was she was not born wealthy. She held quite a number of unglamorous jobs before she met Dr. Jung and entered into depth psychology. So one of the reasons why it was suggested that they lived together was simply to share financial expenses. And so those were the two primary reasons why they were together. Also, it was felt that they would balance each other's personalities.
Von Franz's father was a colonel on the general staff of the Emperor of Austria. And that's why they had to leave Vienna at the end of World War I, is because the Austro-Hungarian Empire got broken up into Czechoslovakia, which got all the industry, Hungary, which got all the agriculture, and Yugoslavia, which got all the had all these seaports. And Austria said, all we get is scenery, But she when von Franz had to buy her first house, she was so afraid of getting a loan for it. And she just didn't know what to do. And she said, the animus told me what to do. She said, I was standing on this very high mountain, and she named it in Switzerland. And far off, she saw a speck coming from almost 200 miles away that you can see. And it kept coming and coming and gotten bigger and bigger. She thought it was a bird, but then she saw it was a skier. And he lands with this great big flourish of snow right beside her and just looks at her, you know, and it's a young Swiss boy. And she says, how did you do that? He says, I just went off the top of the mountain. I went to the top of the mountain and leaped, you know. And so then she knew that she should, you know, buy the house and get the loan.
I should have also added that that Marie-Louise von Franz, her health began to fail at that time because you likely know she suffered from Parkinson's disease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she said she got it after she wrote that book about death because she got too close to a secret. And then somebody asked her, what secret was it? She says,
yes.
I'm going to tell you, I'm already dying. Okay, let's see. We got, why don't Ivan and Miles and Jan, do you have anything? Ivan?
So this is perhaps an obvious point, but I'm really enjoying this thought of thyself versus yourself,
Yes.
and how it relates to free will and the experience of life. I find something almost freeing in it, in terms of perhaps resiliency or something like that, where when good things or bad things come through, they're not entirely created by our decisions. In fact, our decisions might not even be our own decisions. These thoughts might just be coming through us. I don't mean that to completely rid us of any responsibility, but I find that actually somewhat comforting, that we are maybe entirely or partially do not possess free will.
Well, at least we're not the only ones in sharing this know thyself, that we are the witness to it. And it's really the principle of neti, not this, not that. You know, I'm not this, they go through, I'm not this part of myself, I'm not that part. And they go through and there's nothing left. So what are you? You know, I mean, you're the witness. You know, I'm not my eyes, I'm not my mouth, I'm not all of these other things. I'm not the troubles that happen to me, but so it's this sense of, in alchemy, it's called objectify the personal. Everything that happens to us that's personal, you can objectify it. You know, Tony Wolff would tell people to draw a picture of it and set it over here. And then you look at it and you'd say, yeah, that's my troubles, but I guess that's not me. I mean, you're just creating this sense of distance now so that you're not swimming in your troubles, you know, as much, and you're the witness, you know, and that I think is the meaning of neti, and of know thyself rather than know myself, because myself is not very edifying. Thyself is very informative if we let it be. How about you, Miles? You look like you're in a good space. I like that colors combination.
Oh, thank you. Well, and that's everything. If you ever see anything you're impressed with behind me, it's not me. It's not I'm Logos. This is all Eros. This is
yes, I was going to say that's not your typical bare walls with wires hanging down from them.
She's the one that brings the color into my life.
Yeah.
I came from a family where it was my parents thought white walls were that's the only color you can use in the house. And I met Gina and totally transformed that concept for me. Oh my, so much to consider, to talk about. But I guess first of all, I believe today is United Nations Indigenous Day.
Yes, you mentioned that. That's
Indigenous Peoples Day. Well, every day should be Indigenous Peoples Day, and I'm on the traditional territory of the Niitsitapi, also known as the Blackfoot Confederacy here in Alberta, Canada. And Adam Green, I don't know if anyone else took up the invitation that I shared. The University of Calgary was hosting a webinar with Indigenous thought leaders, and it was opened up with a ceremony by Elder Reg Crowshoe of the, I believe he's of the Kainai Nation, if I'm not mistaken. And you're talking about how in the church service, it was, they had the big swinging incense urn.
Yeah.
And this word liminal is one that, you know, I'm sometimes thinking, who taught me English? Because there's so many words that I never really appreciated. And one is liminal. You know, I had to look that up recently. And there's not a lot of ceremony in our Western society, modern
complete
world.
Absence of ritual, which the Indigenous people at least they have a tradition that they could preserve it.
Yeah, and you're
threshold crossings, initiations.
And I'm wondering, you know, for you, you're in Minnesota and on vacation, and it looks like a lovely little cabin.
Yeah, it is a very lovely little cabin right down by the lake.
And what Jordy talked about meditation is it's a law of diminishing return sets in, because it was interesting when he was saying that. I was thinking about how I'm enjoying sitting in the sun and contemplating the energy that I'm feeling on my skin, and feeling that is in a sense being meditative and ceremonial. But you know, if I sat there too long, which indeed started to happen, I started to get uncomfortable. You know, I was starting to sweat. And if I stayed there too long, I'd end up sunburned, right? So yeah. I appreciate what Jordy said, that, you know, this meditation, you've got to find the right balance. Jordy, are you going to say something?
Yes, I am going to be profane. So anyone below 18, switch off, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Meditation starts to work when it starts being a piece of pain in your ass.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbearable, and you reach the spot that you don't give a shit. And then you zero not giving a shit for how long it takes. Then you are in the right track. I could elaborate on that. That happens after 4 hours the first day, and you have a couple of weeks in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Then the body, the wiring starts to develop. But it's, you know, man, I don't give a shit. So fuck you, Jordi, and equanimity. You're fucked up and you are totally pissed off. And
you're giving up, you're surrendering.
I am
ego surrendering.
And that's okay. You give meta to your fuck upness.
Well, I have that you know, I go to these.
And your profanity. I mean, profanity for a practicing physician. I'm not a practicing physician anymore. It's part of life. I mean, much more than appears in Dr. House, as a matter of fact. So you equanimously take it as it is, face the naked truth, and deepen your peace ofness, you know, and then things start to happen. Now, it's not pleasant, so what the fuck? I mean.
Well, you know, I go to these modern dance concerts that the Joffrey Ballet and these other places put on, and, you know, they last 4 hours, and there's that intermission after 2 hours. And that first 2 hours is just excruciating because it's so abstract. And then you know, I said, when's this gonna be over? But then after you go to the intermission, come back, I've given up. I can't take anymore. And then suddenly the second hour comes alive, you know, is because now that I'm not, you know, holding on to, I can't wait to do next. I know I'm never gonna leave, so might as well enjoy it. So Jan, did you have any concluding thoughts? I know you don't, you're the greatest stone in the middle of the river that the river flows around, but we'd love to hear just your lovely voice for a second.
Jan actually asked me to
okay, well, never mind.
Let everybody know that she's not going to speak, but she says
that's
hello.
fine. Okay, well, if you guys don't, if you guys don't mind, if we could do this on Sundays at this time, it would allow me to present a much better presentation, because otherwise I have to do it, from like in the early morning, and it's kind of a more relaxing day, a little bit. I hope it doesn't hurt anybody.
Yeah. Also,
anyway,
having the dream thing on Friday night and the thing on Saturday morning kind of compresses it a little too much.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Maybe even we could have the dream thing, and you guys can tell me any other day of the week, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Just kind of break them up a little bit. Like we could have the dream group on Monday or Tuesday or whenever. I'll do whatever you guys want me to do. But next time we'll finish just with the image and iconoclasm, and then I'll try to bring in a little bit of the Senex and Puer. I think we want to go back to that and the animas of people. But I thought that we'd read Marie-Louise von Franz's part about Jung's active imaginations.
Craig?
Maybe 2 weeks from now. Yes.
Just before we close, one thing we might want to do between now and the next meeting is to consider the fact that within the past week alone, in the United States, millions of people have attended various church service and Jewish services. And we might consider that while these services may not have any meaning for us, it has ritual meaning and significance for millions of people. And we should not fall into the illusion that simply because we do not find meaning in other persons' religions, that in and of itself, it does not have any ritual or spiritual meaning, because nobody is holding a gun to these millions of people's heads to force them to go worship. And that is worth considering, I think. And
well, it is. We all are in need of a healing, and how do we get it is the whole point. I mean, as far
as meeting on Sundays, that's fine for myself personally. Although I'll say that when the coronavirus goes away and the quarantine is lifted, that may change. But for now, most any day or time is fine with me.
Okay. Well, I'm. Thank you. I think I can give a lot better presentation if I have all day Saturday to work on it. Go ahead, Jordy.
A couple of practical suggestions.
Yeah.
Time management and a structure. I would suggest, for me, this time of the day, it's perfect. Either Saturday, better Sunday. So I agree.
Yeah.
I suggest to open the proceedings slightly earlier, say 15 minutes before.
Okay, sure. How about 9:45 or something like that, or that whatever time that is in Spain.
Some 10 minutes of a small chat across
there.
the board.
Good idea. The meeting before the meeting. How about that?
Open the doors before the proceeding and having.
Yes, and then you guys can all talk. So what I'll do is I'll open it up about 9:30, but so you guys can just join anytime. But we'll start the regular meeting at 10.
Yeah. And then if there is a way of having one-to-one contacts, I don't know if Zoom allows that. That one wouldn't hurt as well. Okay.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Well, next time we'll just go over the image and iconoclasm, and then he finishes with the most beautiful why, and we'll do it, because now I just want to mention that my active imaginations, which I've been doing now for about 2 years, are just suddenly starting to blossom, and I think it's because of this group. And it's not anything dramatic, but I do an hour every day, anyway, I just say that let's not just read books about food, let's eat food too. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Jordy.
more suggestions to you. I would suggest you structure your presentation in several blocks.
Yes.
I will suggest to make a short block of 5 minutes connecting to the last session.
Yeah.
And the day's agenda. Then condensate the meaning of you are doing in 3, say 15 minutes monologue. And after this 15-minute block, make a wrap up.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Just get a little bit of comments. And yeah, I did feel that I was kind of rushing it today because there was a lot to cover, and I didn't want to just blab on and on, but I just had so much crap there.
Practical solution. It will be more comfortable for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Okay. We'll just those are great suggestions. I'll open the meeting at 9:30. I'll do. I'll tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'll tell you, and then I'll tell you what I told you. That's what they told me to do. Okay?
You tell what you're going to tell, how connects to the last day. Block 1, wrap up. Block 2, wrap up. Block 3,
yep.
Round things, and then homework for the next session, something like that.
Perfect.
And then maybe 5 minutes of shop talk or a small talk at the end.
Okay, that sounds great. And then, of course, anybody can jump in at any time too. So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, oh no, I think it'd be cool if other members, if they wanted to have a small presentation to kind of throw in occasionally.
Certainly.
Which
certainly.
I might
we're not rushing through this. I mean, the only time I'm rushing through it is because I don't want to bore anybody, but maybe my rushing through it is boring everybody. But anyway, I do want to cover this. I think if we understand this essay, the relationship to active imagination is going to be greatly enriched. And I think it is also going to be by the next two things is by the one by von Franz from Jung's biography. And then after that, we'll read some of the Joanne Chaudhry's compilation of Jung's works in active imagination, including the transcendent function. You know, and the whole idea is just to kind of get a little bit of a background on the material that out of which this sprang, you know. But anyway, well, thank you so much.
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
Suggest that, you know, like there was so much in here that I would have liked to have maybe thrown in a few contributions, but, you know, we can use the thread, the email thread, if everybody's on email.
Definitely.
You know, I wanted to point this out, but, you know, we just didn't have time. So encourage that.
Yeah, any presentation, I mean, the ones you've been doing, Miles, and the ones that you've had, and Adam, are particularly significant. So anyway, we'll meet next time. I'll open the doors at whatever time in the world is 9:30 Chicago. And I know Kevin dropped out. I didn't get a chance to listen to Kevin. He's in the Philippines. So anyway, I'll see you next week and Sunday. Okay, thank you, everybody. And
bye, everyone.
Take care. We'll see you guys all later. Bye-bye.